Hey, good day, government students out there, and welcome to the first episode in Mr. Berkman's flipped classroom. As I said in class, before we can actually get to understand these basic pieces of government, we have to understand the philosophies that are at the very basis of our understanding of the relationship between people to other people, people in the society, and then the people in government. So we have to look at these social contract philosophers and these social contract theorists in our studies. Now, there are some key things that we do need to define. First of all, what do we mean by the state of nature? For all these theorists, that state of nature is a pre-social condition. It's a time in which people were together, but nothing had been set up. No government, no understandings, no contracts had been set up at all at this point. What comes next, though, is the social contract. And the social contract is an important piece that comes naturally in a state of nature, according to these philosophers. This social contract is simply an agreement between members of the community. It might be between the community members themselves, or even members of the community and the sovereign. This sovereign is the legitimate head of state that comes to power or is granted power after the social contract has been written. So when we take a look at these philosophers, we have to understand the state of nature and the social contract and the sovereign and the interrelated nature of those pieces. When we look at these philosophers, who we're really looking at are three major philosophers: Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. That's really kind of the order in which they come. One inspires the other, and they all kind of take different tacks. So let's take a look at what they each talk about. When we look at the first question, we have to understand what's their view of human nature. For the three of them, they have different views of human nature. Thomas Hobbes is much more critical of human nature. He says we're all selfish human beings, and because we're selfish, we want to violate people's rights. He says we must be controlled. John Locke, on the other hand, says humans are rational by nature, and by and large can really control themselves. Given an opportunity, given a choice, they can control themselves in this state of nature because our human nature is rational. Jean-Jacques Rousseau says humans are good and we're compassionate by nature, but we can be corrupted. Given the opportunity, we can be corrupted by the social contract or civilization that's taking us in the wrong direction. Now, before we look at what the state of nature is, we've got to look at some examples of what they are. I think the perfect example of state of nature is Lost, the TV show. Of course, one of the characters is John Locke, another one is Rousseau, but the state of nature is just like Lost. Plane crashes, we're on a deserted island, we have no contact with the outside world, and now we have to put together a culture and a society, and we have to save each other and help each other. And the study of human nature is the key part of how the society lives, thrives, or dies. So in this state of nature, what Thomas Hobbes is really saying is it's a dangerous place. And he says the life of man is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. It's not a good place to be. For John Locke, the state of nature exists anytime the humans they haven't entered into agreement with each other to participate in a government. It might be a desert island, or maybe it's just people living on their own. But even though there is no government, it's not chaotic because humans are rational. And in that rational understanding of humanity, we have three natural rights: the right to life, liberty, and property. For Jean-Jacques Rousseau, that state of nature is a wonderful, rich environment that early humans living in were living solitary and peaceful lives. It was a utopia, maybe. I don't know. It was something that was perfect beyond understanding at that point. Now we have to look at this idea of the sovereign. Who controls? Once we're in that state of nature, they have definite views on how society needs to be controlled. For Thomas Hobbes, there's no answer but a monarch. People are evil, life is nasty, brutish, and short. We need somebody to take the reins and take control. We need a monarch. For John Locke, the people would elect a government in democratic elections. Now, of course, when he's writing, he's talking about all males, or all adult males, but the people are electing government in a democratic election. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the very same thing. The people are going to vote on all matters. People are going to have a say. It's the people who are the sovereign. So there's very different views as to who's going to hold the power and how they're going to lead this government. Now, once we enter into the social contract, once we've developed this contract and we develop this government, what's the effect of it? Well, for Hobbes, because we have this monarch and because people are under control, people are going to live in peace without rights, except maybe for the right to self-defense. But they're under control of the monarch, but there's peace. They've been controlled. Human nature has been harnessed. For John Locke, those three natural rights are certainly going to exist. In the state of nature, that right to life, liberty, and property is going to be easier to enforce by the government because people have given their express consent. And the people that have given their express consent are going to be bound by the contract. People who have signed on the dotted line are going to be held to that social contract. For Rousseau, life is going to be fair for everybody as long as we employ the general will and we set aside personal preferences. As long as we look to the common good and as long as we look to the benefit for everybody and set aside our personal interests, we're going to be okay. Now, how does this make its way into understanding of American government? Well, if you look, Thomas Hobbes is the one that starts it all. Thomas Hobbes' work inspires John Locke. And through John Locke, we get our window into our understanding of American constitutionalism and the American Revolution. Because from John Locke, we get Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson takes the philosophy of John Locke and that natural rights philosophy, and we really get what we now know as the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights that among those include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Sounds a heck of a lot like life, liberty, and property to me. Thomas Hobbes also inspires Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And it's important to look at Rousseau because Rousseau's ideas go on to inspire Immanuel Kant, Marxism, the environmental movement, respect for indigenous peoples, Native Americans, and really even modern childhood education. The effect of this, the seeds of inspiration from the social contract philosophers radiate out, even still today. When we talk about Immanuel Kant or when we talk about John Rawls, those are where those influences come from. So when it comes down to it, here's what you need to know. For Hobbes, man is evil. Government is needed to protect the public. The government should be all-powerful and you can't overthrow it. Power should be shared. The executive authority is absolute. But then when we look at Locke, that's the key part. Man is good in his eyes. The government is wanted and is desired and it's there to benefit the public. And the government, well, it should be conditional. We can overthrow it. And the power should be shared in the legislature and the executive. This is where we start to talk about divided and balanced government. This is where we start to talk about the right of revolution. And this is where we talk about things like a government pointed towards civic virtue and the common good. And that's where we'll pick up next time, is this key foundational piece in American government. Be safe out there.